To date, it always has. The healthcare bill is an effort to satisfy. You have a whole group of people who are out of alignment politically. So you have pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies that want to make more money, even though their businesses have what I call a negative total economic return. In other words, the health of Americans continues to deteriorate. And the more money they make, the more our health deteriorates. And so we really have a non-alignment between the people, the customer, and the corporations who are supposed to be serving the customer. And the way the corporations have resolved that is to go to Washington and get Washington to pass rules that force the customer to pay the corporations whether they need them or not, or whether they can afford them or not. Okay? And it's really a way of liquidating the wealth of the people to prop up these corporations. So, for example, people in New Zealand or Mexico will describe the fact that they can buy lots of drugs, pharmaceutical drugs, for 10 cents on the dollar of what we pay here. Okay, so clearly government is using their governmental authority to force profits into the pharmaceutical cartel within the taper. So you have a whole bunch of corporations who, as Americans' income fall, are looking to use government to engineer more profits into them. Okay. At the same time, you have a large number of people in the population who don't have health care, are very concerned about that. We know that one of the number one, or one of the greatest reasons for bankruptcy and real trouble with credit card debt in this country is people with healthcare problems. So you have, and then of course you have an aging population. So we have a population that is very concerned about their ability to get health care or access to it, that are hoping to get some kind of health care. So you watch the people come into this process, and you watch the corporations come into this process, and of course there's a huge non-alignment. Now, in the backdrop, there's a third agenda, which to me is the most important agenda in the mix on healthcare reform. And that agenda is the desire to have much greater control. Okay? Now, you can say it's the government, but in fact, if you look at who really controls and operates and runs the government, it's not the government. It's very powerful private interests behind the government. Some people call it the shadow government, but there are groups behind that. And if you look at the provisions that have been discussed for controlling doctors, dictating to doctors what their policies will be, requiring disclosure to the government of all sorts of confidential private information about people and their health, you're looking at one of the most effective tools to implement fascism that I've ever seen. Now, let's go back. If you and I were to walk into Washington and say, oh, we have these 21 agencies. We have the Department of Housing and Urban Development. We have the Department of HHS, Health and Human Services. We have the military. We have all these different agencies. You would see lots of different agencies. That's not what I see. What I see is 3 defense contractors who control and operate the databases and the IT systems for all 21. So I don't see 21 agencies. I see Lockheed Martin. Okay, I see DynCorp. I see, and they have the data. They have this data and this data and this data and this data and this data. Okay, now let me step back in time. Edwin Black wrote a magnificent book on the Holocaust about IBM helping the Nazis build the database operation they needed to implement the Holocaust. Okay, now, who's just been chosen as one of the lead contractors on our census? IBM, okay? And Lockheed Martin, I believe. So if you look at all the databases they have from around the country already, and you combine those databases with the data that could come from the healthcare bill on everybody's personal health information and their accurate address, what have you got? You've got the basis, you have the equivalent in 2010 of what the Nazis had to do the Holocaust. God forbid you should combine that with a national ID card. Okay? But you're basically you're turning over to a small handful of private, powerful interests, a complete database on this country that, combined what they have through the banking and other systems, is unbelievably phenomenal. And you layer on top of that artificial intelligence. Now, at the heart of any health situation, you have a patient and a doctor. And the thing that most protects that patient is the oath that doctor takes. That doctor's ethical commitment is to do whatever is in your interest. So if I'm in an emergency room and I'm trying to save your life, I don't think, giving you this shot of adrenaline is more expensive than you can afford. My obligation is to save your life. When you fundamentally re-engineer the government rules and regulations so that they supersede that oath, then you're talking about creating a world in which your power as a citizen is radically diminished, because I'm cutting off from you the information and resources you need to make wise decisions about your health. Now, we're talking about healthcare. That change is happening across the board. The IRS is requiring tax preparers to enroll in, with the IRS and become not your tax preparer with ethical obligations to you, but their enforcement arm. So it's your doctor, it's your tax preparer, it's your accountant, all across the board. The professionals that you use in every aspect of your life are suddenly having their regulatory structure re-engineered so that person's ethical obligation is to the government and not you. And what that means is you can then be literally at the most intimate levels of your life and your finances. Your whole life can be engineered to serve the corporations and not you.